Imagine you're living in a village deep in the Amazon forest. Night has fallen. The jungle around you is alive with sounds. Insects hum from the trees. Frogs call from the riverbank. Somewhere in the darkness, something splashes in the water. The air is heavy and warm. Tonight, the village is celebrating. Music drifts through the night as people gather beneath strings of lights and lanterns. Laughter echoes through the crowd. Friends greet each other. Children run beneath the tables. For a while, everything feels normal. Then you notice something you've never seen before. A stranger, standing quietly at the edge of the celebration. They're dressed impeccably. Calm, confident, almost too perfect. You can't help but look their way. Nobody remembers seeing them arrive. Yet somehow, before long, they're the center of attention. Dancing, laughing, telling stories, drawing people in effortlessly. Hours pass. The celebration continues. Then, as the first hint of dawn begins to brighten the horizon, the stranger disappears. No one sees them leave. No one knows where they went. But by morning, the whispers have already begun. Someone claims they saw the stranger walk towards the river. Another swears they watched a figure step into the water before vanishing in the darkness. An old fisherman insists moments later, a pink river dolphin surfaced where the stranger had been standing. The villager exchange knowing looks because they've heard stories like this all their lives. Stories of a mysterious visitor who emerges from the Amazon River under the cover of night. A visitor who looks human, acts human, charm everyone they meet, but isn't human at all. According to one of Brazil's most enduring legends, the stranger was a boto, a pink river dolphin in disguise. Welcome to Fact, Fiction, or Something in Between, internet friends. This is a series where we explore legends, conspiracies, mysteries, testimonies, and strange stories from all around the world. Some of these stories have simple explanations, some remain unresolved, and some sit somewhere in the uncomfortable space between fact and fiction. Today we're traveling deep into the Amazon rainforest to investigate one of Brazil's oldest legends, Boto Cor-de-Rosa. But before we get into the story, make sure you subscribe if you enjoy exploring mysteries, legends, strange stories like this. Now, without any further ado, let's get into the story. To understand where the story came from, we need to travel deep into the Amazon, long before modern roads and cities connected the region. For thousands of years, life revolved around the river. It provided food, transportation, fresh water, and it was home to one of the Amazon's most unusual animals, the boto, also known as the pink river dolphin. Unlike ocean dolphins, botos can develop a striking pink color as they age. They're intelligent, curious, and known to approach boats of fishermen. To the people living around the river, they seem very different, almost human. Over time, stories began to spread. Story that these dolphins could understand people, that they listened from beneath the river, that they knew more than any animal should know. And eventually, these stories develop into something far stranger. According to the legend, the boto could take human form. At night, it would emerge from the river as a handsome stranger, charming, well-dressed, impossible to ignore. The stranger would appear into gatherings, celebrations, and festivals before vanishing before sunrise. But according to the legend, the boto wasn't visiting villages for entertainment. It had another purpose. The story claims that the boto transformed into a man in order to seduce women and father children before returning to the river. And over time, people came to believe that these stories were real. And as strange as it sounds, the boto wasn't simply a bedtime story. For generations, communities throughout the Amazon treated the legend as something that actually happened. The belief became so widespread that unfamiliar men wearing hats were sometimes jokingly asked to remove them to prove they weren't botos in disguise. Stories of the boto appeared whenever pregnancies could not easily be explained. A mysterious stranger, brief encounter, child born months later. And for many communities, the explanation was simple. The boto was responsible. Anthropologists and journalists who visited the Amazon communities throughout the 20th century repeatedly encountered versions of the same story. Different villages, different families, different storytellers. And yet, the details remained remarkably similar. The handsome stranger, the hat, the charm, the disappearance before dawn. But before we go any further, we need to talk about the animal in the center of the story. Because the boto is real. And honestly, it's strange enough without any legends around it. Officially known as the Amazon River dolphin, the boto lives throughout the Amazon and Orinoco river systems. Unlike the dolphins most of us picture, botos don't live in the ocean. They spent their entire lives in freshwater rivers, flooded forests, and winding channels deep in the rainforest. And then there's their appearance. While younger dolphins are typically gray, many botos become increasingly pink as they age. Some develop a soft pink color, others become so bright they almost look unreal. Imagine seeing something like that emerge from a foggy river at sunrise hundreds of years ago. It's not difficult to understand why people thought there was something special about them, but the color isn't the only unusual thing. Most dolphins have neck vertebrae that are fused together, limiting how much they can move their head. Botos are different. They can usually turn their heads side to side, giving them an almost unsettling appearance compared to other dolphins. They're also incredibly intelligent and curious. Fishermen have reported seeing them follow boats for miles and miles. Some approach canoes without fear. Others seem to watch people from just underneath the surface before going quietly back to the river. To modern scientists, these behaviors are fascinating, but I can understand that for someone living in an isolated village, this might seem like an unusual behavior, almost human. And that's probably why I made the boto look so different from the other animals. It wasn't just something people saw. It felt like something that was watching them back. So over time, this story became very woven into the culture of the region. Parents told their children, grandparents passed down to future generations, and even people who didn't fully believe the legend claimed to know someone who knew someone who had experienced it. That's part of what makes this story so fascinating. Very few people have claimed to have seen a boto transform into a human with their own eyes, yet almost everyone seemed to know someone that had. And sometimes legends don't survive because people have witnessed them firsthand, but because they trust the people that have told these stories before them. So how did people living hundreds of miles apart end up telling the same story? Was it a coincidence? Did the story simply spread along the river over the generations? Or was there something about the boto himself that inspired these beliefs? Researchers believe that the story has much more to do with human nature than it actually has to do with the boto himself. For centuries, many Amazon villages were small and isolated. Pregnancy outside marriage was often carried with shame. Absent father raised difficult questions, and topics like infidelity, abuse, sexuality were not often discussed. The legend of the boto offered an explanation people already understood. The boto did it. In some cases, researchers believe that the story of the boto helped explain pregnancies from unknown or absent fathers. In some other cases, it might have helped communities avoid discussing more painful realities. Over time, the explanation became tradition. The tradition became folklore, and the folklore became one of Brazil's most enduring legends. So, did the Pink River dolphin really transform into a human and wander into villages under the cover of darkness? Probably not. But even after centuries, the story refuses to disappear. Maybe because in every great legend, there's a grain of truth. Not that dolphins become people, but that there are still mysteries that are inside cultures that we don't fully understand. And perhaps that's why the story of the boto continues to survive. Alright, internet friends, so that was the story of the boto. And let me know in the comments, have you ever heard of this legend before? Or do you think that stories like this are just folklore? Or is there sometimes a little truth hidden behind them? If you enjoyed this video, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.